Just a moment.
Yeah.
Let me, oh, there we go. I was going to check with Dan, see if we're live, and I see we're up on YouTube.
Oh, we are? Okay, good. Okay, I just muted it.
There is a delay.
Yeah, I heard that. Okay, good. But that's fine. Now I can see it. Okay, shoot. Can we start, Diana?
Yeah, ready when you are.
Okay, great.
Oh,
All right.
just a reminder, anyone who's not speaking should probably mute their.
Sure. Hello? Is it? Can you hear me?
I believe we're ready to go. Yep. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So the first item on our agenda is a review of the financial reports from January and February. So Patrick, thanks for getting those to us. I know that this is a whole new system and we just had check registers. I know it's not going to be the total of the reports that we receive moving forward, but this is a good start.
Yes, and we did have a couple of different formats for the check register. I think this one most closely resembled the last form type that we had. The biggest difference that you see is, for example, in January, it actually breaks the check register down by check run. It's not just the entire month of January. So that's why as you scroll down over the 30 pages in January, you see that it's broken up into sections. So that's the big difference that we have. So it'll tell you, for example, on the check run then on the 10th of January, the total for regular checks, ACH, wire transfers, and e-payables was $156,051.01. So.
Right, and I did notice too that the way that it categorized them by check run, but it also categorized them alphabetically by payee, it looks like, which is different than the chronological order that we used to get.
I believe if I'm looking at it, it may, when they put the check run, and that's why, because it's done by check run,
sure.
When you run the checks, it will order it in alphabetical order for that run.
Okay.
And so it's actually in order by check number and by alphabetical order, because that's just the way Skyward works.
Okay, that's
So
fine. I just noticed it. Yeah.
When you run a check, when you do a check run, it doesn't run the checks as in the order that they were put in. It runs them alphanumerical by name and check number.
Okay, and that's fine. I just noticed it was a difference.
The other thing that it does show as well is what type of a payment it is. Is it a ACH payment, or if it's a hard check payment?
Yep, I noticed that too. So there were just a few items that I had questions about, Patrick, and then everybody else can jump in too with any questions that they had. I noticed a couple of big payments to Bob Rogers Travel. What is that for?
Those would be for some of the trips that the high schoolers are taking. For example, prepayments for or additional payments for the France trip, which is in question right now, or the Orlando trip, which is in question right now. And then there are also some preliminary checks for trips that are planned for the future.
Okay.
So we work with a travel agent on that, simply so that we can make sure that we're getting all of the insurances and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Sure, that makes sense. And then this, on the January run, January 16th run, it says AUL Special Pay Trust Mid-America Admin is that the Minimaker services? That's the custodial services?
Can you give me a check number?
You bet. Yeah,
or-
the check number is 200097.
No, that's actually a retirement account that we're paying to.
Oh, okay. Because the title looked different than the Mid-American Services that I think is
Right.
custodial.
Right. That's a payment. The special pay trust is a retirement type vehicle that we have in the district. So
So
And
it's just an account that we make periodic payments to? I don't remember ever seeing
Correct.
that one, but okay. But we've done that in the past.
correct.
Okay. And then there was on check number 200150 that was made out to an individual, it looks like for $10,000, which I thought was weird.
And again, because I didn't get these questions ahead of time,
I know. Yeah.
I can't.
Okay.
I
I'm
have to
gonna
go and
put
look
this-
this person up. Yeah.
That's
So if
okay.
you
I'll
wanna
put this
send-
in a follow-up. I'll put it in a follow-up to you,
Perfect.
and then we'll find out. Okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah. And again, that I'd have to look that one up.
Sure, that's fine. And then what is Riverside Insights? That's
Again,
check number 200156. Follow up on
yeah,
that one?
without having
Sure.
the information at my fingertips.
That's okay. I think that you're so usually prepared that I assume that you'll know this stuff, Patrick.
Well, there's been a little bit going on the last few weeks,
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure.
and that has kind of taken away my time to actually sit and guess what questions you guys might have.
Yeah,
So
I
that's
understand.
where, we try to get these out ahead of time so that you have a chance to look at them and then send the
Yeah.
questions. So,
Sure. And
You know,
to be fair, I haven't had that much time in between either. So okay. And then the Richardson School, is it monthly payments to the Richardson School, or is it more frequent than monthly?
no, I don't believe it's more frequent than monthly.
Okay. And how many kids do we have there right now? Do you remember off the top of your head?
That's a Amanda question.
Okay. All right. I can ask her. Cost on that, just so I have an idea, because I feel like that's something I should know. I'll ask her. Okay. And then,
You would be the first board member in 10 years that asked me what the Richardson School was.
oh no, I know what the Richardson School is. I
Yeah.
just want to know, like, how much, what is the spend is what I'm asking.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Is that
'cause
part of the original thing that we had a couple months back with CISA? With all of the special education stuff that we had with that?
It's a special education expense. Typically, these expenses to the Richardson School are for individual students that we don't have the ability to serve in-house. So we send
Yeah,
them
and
to.
I thought those numbers were though included in part of the CISA agree. So we all voted on approving the money for CISA payments.
Right. Richardson
for all
School
of the
isn't part of
outside
CISA
services.
though.
I'm sorry.
Richardson isn't part of CISA though.
Okay, I thought for some reason that was lumped under there, and we went through CISA to get that, but that could be
Okay.
mistaken.
Hmm.
Okay.
Okay, and then I'm looking at the payment to the City of New Berlin with check number 200201. Is that like the short-term borrowing stuff that we do with them? Or what is that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and then,
Yeah, and I'm just going to say I believe that that number seems a little high for the short-term borrowing.
yeah,
And so that may be, for example, that could be a salt purchase. I'd have to, and again,
I'll put that on my list. I'll put that on
put
my
it
list,
on your
Patrick.
list.
Yep.
Because again, I
You
have to
betcha.
go and
I
look
know.
a lot of this stuff up.
Sure.
Specifically when I'm going through and approving the bills, It's
Yeah.
really easy. I click a button and it pops open the documentation.
Sure.
When I do it after the fact, it's a little more labor intensive.
Sure. No, I understand.
So
And you don't know what I'm going to ask on the front end.
I saw one of the checks for Portaphone Company.
for who?
Portaphone, P-O-R-T-A phone company. But that was a little interesting. I was expecting Porta John once I read the first word, but then I saw Portaphone.
And again, if you can send those questions to me, I'll find out. That's why we send this information to you guys, try to get it a week ahead of time so that I can try to look all this stuff up.
Yeah, no, I just came across that one now. I didn't have any before that. I apologize.
Sure. So what I'm gonna do, Patrick, for the rest of these questions is I'm just gonna send you an email and I'll send it to the whole
That would be
committee too.
perfect.
Yep, let's do that because otherwise I feel like I keep asking you questions and you don't know the answers off the top of your head because I didn't send them to you ahead of time.
Sure.
Okay. So all right.
Yeah, I
so
just have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
So I understand the payment type. There's check and then there's ACH. There's also one that's blank. It's an 800 leading number. Are those the e-payables, or what are the ones? Okay. And then my last question is, typically on the check register we would see payroll, but I don't think I saw that on the January or February. Is that part of a different report now?
Correct. What we're only showing now are the actual accounts payable. That was a nuance of Alio where we didn't segregate the payroll. And because of that, if you remember, just about every finance committee meeting when we would go through this, there would be all kinds of questions about different payroll expenses. And for a while, I just keep saying the same thing. That's the payroll. So essentially what we're doing in this is we're segregating, we're taking the payroll stuff out because, again, the purpose of this is to see what we're doing for accounts payable, not for payroll.
Okay, so that would be part of a different report?
It would be part of a different report. If that's information that you want to see, all I need to do then is print those reports in addition. It will be additional reports that you're going to have for the month.
No, I guess I'm not really concerned too much about actual payroll. I just was more, we talked a little bit, and I think this will probably come up in the Skyward one, is looking to see, year to date where we are on budgeted items. And so just, looking kind of forward, thinking of where that would fall. That's all.
Yeah, where that's going to fall is it's going to be a completely different report that is not associated with the check register, where we're going to look at what we budgeted for the year and where each account is year to date.
that's good.
Okay.
That is what we need to see.
Yep, and that's going to be a separate report that I'm going to be developing with Skyward once we get our accounts essentially back from them. It should be Thursday.
Great. That's good. And then, Patrick, I did have one final question about on the check register in general. At the very last page of each of the January and February check register reports, you had a summary by fund. And I think is that sort of like a balance sheet? Is that what I'm looking at?
It's absolutely not a balance sheet. It's just
not.
a total. Okay. It's a total for the monthly check register by fund.
Of how much we've spent out of each
Correct.
of those funds. Okay.
Yep.
Is there a reason why there's such a huge change between January and February? I mean, that's a big differential between the 2 months.
Let me pull the February one up.
I'm just because usually I would think that most of our months would be relatively, similar.
Oh, absolutely not.
Really? Okay.
January is going to be a bigger month because we have, for example, the payment inside of this. There's payment for our short-term borrowing.
Okay.
Which isn't a huge amount, but
No.
This varies greatly from payroll. I should say it can vary greatly from month to month. You're going to have really big months like August and September, And then you're also going to have, like in January, when they're purchasing materials for the beginning of the new semester,
Okay.
you're going to see an increase.
And I think it's because we've never been given reports in the past, as you know, that I've seen anyway, where it's the monthly expenses are detailed. And I would, you know, my assumption would be that those would be spread relatively evenly over the course of the year, but it sounds like they're not.
Nope. What
Okay.
what you will find is from month to month, both revenue and expense can vary greatly. It's not, we don't just spend the same amount from
Sure.
month to month.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions on those reports?
If I can just, you know, put in another shameless plug for, if I can get these questions ahead of time, we're going to go a lot quicker through this.
Fair enough, Patrick. I will note that for the next meeting. Thank you. Absolutely. And I will send you, and I'll send you a follow-up too.
Is there any way we can get these in Excel out of this PDF format that we're getting them in?
I guess I can try. I'm not sure why. Because everything's added up. I prefer to not. This is why I like these documents coming straight out of the financial program, because you can make an Excel spreadsheet say anything you want. And so,
Well, no, I guess my thing is I got to look through 30 pages to get through all the $47 ones. And it's just kind of nice of, we look at, you know, the top 5 and then, you know, the top 20% of the spend, because like the Andrew Galleon of $60, I don't know that we're going to go
so
through
here's
all
what's
of
going
them.
to happen. Here's what's going to happen, Mitch, if I dump this into an Excel spreadsheet, is when you sort it, it's going to put the columns that add up the totals all, you know, essentially now you're going to mix everything up. You're not going to have a nice alphabetical order and an alphanumerical order for the check. I can see what that looks like and give it to you. Usually,
Yeah,
you
I'm just curious if we can
programs.
get that, if we can just get that export out of there, because I'll be honest, the alphabetical doesn't help me as much as
Right,
filtering.
but I'm also hoping that you're not going to start asking me questions on everything over $40.
Well, yeah, that's the reason why, is so that we can only ask questions on stuff over 10,000 or anomalies that we're seeing big spends on that we don't know about. That's what I want to try to get it to, so we don't.
Let me see what I can do, and I'll try to provide that for you next month.
Okay, appreciate it. Yeah, I just want to take a look at that and see how if that helps our conversations as well.
Okay. So anything else on the reports?
No, I'm
Okay.
good.
Okay. Now, could we move on to Fund 80? I know that Patrick, you and I talked when we met last about you're giving a little bit of a primer on all of these funds, and Fund 80 seemed like a good place to start given our conversations recently.
Yeah, I can answer some questions any of the questions that you might have on Fund 80.
Okay.
But here's kind of the general gist of what goes into Fund 80, and it's essentially the guidance that we get from the Department of Public Instruction are, you know, these are to support expenses that are intended for community education, training, rec, cultural or athletic programs that are outside, and here's the key, they're outside of our regular curriculum or our extracurricular program for pupils. And so the use of Fund 80 has to be tied to a true community program. The other thing that we can't do with Fund 80 that we used to be able to do is just make large assumptive transfers from the community service fund to the general fund. School districts used to have the liberty of, I'm just going to say, estimating what the expenses were for the community services and just charging that off. At this point in time, because of changes in legislation, we have to be very careful about the items that we just charge to Fund 50. I'm sorry, Fund 80, which is the community service. And the DPI put together, this big decision tree as to whether, what things can fit into the community service fund and what things can't. And as you go through that, the biggest thing is, if Fund 80 were to go away, this program would have to go away. And so I guess it's just one of those where I wanted to bring to everybody's attention that there are some significant restrictions on the use of Fund 80. And so when when somebody approaches me and says, can't we use Fund 80 to pay for this? Most often my answer is going to be, let me check into that, because there's a lot more that goes into it than just, well, this is to help the community.
Sure. So I think that part of where this discussion came out, grew out of, was Mitch's question about Elmbrook's use of Fund 80 and how they were able to allocate and use some dollars out of their community service fund for, I believe, Mitch, you said it was for things like use of their pool, and I think that's what you said. Correct me, though, if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now.
If, for example, our rec department uses our pool for their rec programming, we're able to, we either charge them rent or we charge them based on the actual, like the utility costs for operating the pool. We can't just
looking at Brookfield's budget right here, their utilities are 100 district custodial time needed for accommodating community pool. Also, since 2017-18, teachers pay. So there's $108,000 in utilities. I didn't remember seeing any breakdown in ours for utilities. And then there's salaries and benefits. Oh, go ahead.
Because we don't, most likely, our pools aren't metered separately, and so we can't do that. And
okay.
Again, when you're looking at the salaries, the teaching salaries, I don't know what they're teaching. I'd have to have a much deeper dive into the finances of their community service program, because, for example, if we're running the community service program where we're doing swim lessons and we're paying the teachers to do swim lessons, we're paying the teachers to teach, lifeguard skills or whatever, we would be able to charge that off to Fund 80. If the rec department in New Berlin is teaching, and so they're collecting all the money for swim lessons, and all they're doing is using our pool, then it's whatever fees we've established for the rec department to use our pool. We don't get to charge for the teachers because it's a rec program. And
yes, I think that's the question. That what are we charging all of the rec facilities to use our facilities? Because I'm trying to pull up our current budget right now.
Well, I think that didn't we talk about that at the last meeting, because we talked about what we garner from facilities rentals, don't we? Didn't we?
Well, yeah, but that's facilities rentals from volleyball teams and stuff like that. That's
right.
not necessary.
No, that's facilities rentals from everybody, Mitch.
Right. That was everybody lumped together that we talked about last meeting.
And then that's also something that we're working through in a separate project, and that's our facilities rental. So we're actually going through all of that right now.
But charging for the facilities rental and then having, and then having electrical bills and everything else on top of that would be additional.
Correct.
But
But unless we have the ability to document what electricity is used by the rec department, it's technically an ineligible charge.
So there'd
Can't
have to be a
just say-
separate meter, right, Patrick?
Correct. You can't just say you've used it for 10 days and we feel the electrical cost is this much for 10 days. You have to actually be able to meter that and make it an actual cost. It has to be
And
done.
my understanding is that our facility rental fee, whatever we're charging for facility rental, should include all of our costs. So for pool rental, it should include not only use of the time of use of the pool, but also whatever energy is used to heat the pool and the pool surrounding areas.
That's correct.
So I think
And that's why,
yeah.
and that's why we need to, that's why we're going through the process of looking at all of our facilities rentals to determine if it's a realistic cost. Should we be increasing our cost, or are we doing, are we keeping the cost reasonable as a community service?
Sure. And I think
But
that
if
not
we-
only, go ahead.
I'm sorry, if we don't charge the community for use of our pool or use of our gyms, could we then, would we be able to use the fund, that fund 80 for that cost or not? Because we're not, let's say we're not charging New Berlin for the use of our pool. Is there any way that we
we'd have to
could?
find the cost. We'd have to find the actual cost of it. That's what you're saying. We have to put a meter on the pool. But if
Okay.
that's what Elmbrook is doing to pull in $100,000 of revenue, then I think.
And again, I don't know if Elmbrook has the rec department within its school district. Because that, for example, we made quite a bit of money on Fund 80 in Shorewood because we charged them rent for buildings.
The other thing I was looking at is I know the NBAA program uses our gyms for everything, and I don't believe I remember seeing them as a big contributor on the last fund we had that we showed all the revenue.
Again,
So I was
another
wondering-
conversation that the board is going to have to determine what organizations fall into, for example, Tier 1, where they don't have to pay to use our facilities, or Tier 2, where they pay a reduced rate, or Tier 3, where they're going to pay a full rate.
So I wasn't actually going down that path of we should charge them more, or we should figure out what tier they're in. My comment was going to be around that they're using those gyms, and if that's something we need to do, is that something you guys can put a separate meter on the Ike and West gyms to be able to figure out what the additional cost is, so that we can also lump that into this revenue bucket?
That's a question I'm going to have to find out from the department, simply because I don't want to, there's no asking for forgiveness on this one. If we have an ineligible cost, they take it away from our revenue limit.
Yeah, I fully understand. We don't want to do anything illegal, but yes.
Oh, yeah.
That was the main
So-
takeaway. And then the other one Elmbrook had on there was they pay their band teacher to help with the 4th of July parade, and that's part of the expenses in there. Do we know if we pay our teachers to be in that? Is that an additional bonus that they get for teaching at Eisenhower
Right.
and West?
When you raised that question, we said, I looked at it and said, it's a great question. Let's make sure that we pay attention to this. If it's anything that we're doing as a service to the community, those are things that we can, potentially charge off.
Is there someone within district office? Now, I know that your team is pretty well varied with this Oleo conversion and everything. Is there someone else that does, Nicole or something like that, that does some comparisons to other school districts that can pull some of these Fund 80 reports from a local school district and see if there's anything else in? Like
Again, no, what we need to do is we need to let me catch my breath this year and then start to dig deeper into that. That's part of my job. It's just that right now there's a lot of large fish to fry. And I can tell you that, recovering the cost of the band teacher from last year probably isn't going to be a great, windfall. But I need to be able to look at this a little bit more carefully. I know
So
we want to try to knock down the forest with one swing of the axe, but we do, and I feel like I'm a broken record saying there's just a lot going on, but there's just a lot going on. And I don't have the ability, nor do I have the staff anymore to say, dig into this.
Sure. And Patrick, I think that maybe moving forward, if you could, and I think probably because we're having this discussion, it's going to happen naturally. If you could just kind of keep an eye on this community service fund to see if there are other ways that we can maximize its use, I think that's probably what, like Mitch is talking about and what we're talking about as a committee.
Right.
So,
and I do that all the time.
Yeah,
Like,
and I figured that you did.
What I do.
Right. But I think that we can all kind of have the discussion surrounding it and then kind of leave it, in your lap with all the other crap you're dealing with and say, hey, keep this in mind as you move forward, because what we'd like to do is we'd like to maximize the resources available to us in that community fund so that we can make our dollars stretch a little further.
Roger.
Thank you. Okay, are there other questions about Fund 80 or any other issues or surrounding Fund 80?
Nope.
Okay, Mitch?
Nope.
Okay. Let's move on to the update on the Skyward conversion. So where are we at, Patrick? How are things going? Clearly you were able to.
And I kind of touched on that just a bit before. They're on track with the delivery of our financial data on the 26th of March. The step after that is going to be, essentially my staff and I going through that and verifying everything. Look for things that look out of place. Look for things that are suspect. And essentially, the biggest thing is going to be looking at account codes that didn't seem to transfer over, so that we can make sure that we move everything over. What Skyward is telling me is everything looks good, and that they feel they are going to be able to deliver that second pass on the 26th. The only thing that's going to make it difficult is now it's, I'm not sitting down in a room with my staff and having conversations about this.
Sure.
We're, having email and text message and phone conversations. So we're still going to get it done. It's just going to be a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, like everything is at this point.
Yep. But, there, again, all I can say is what Skyward's telling me, and that everything looks good and on track. So.
Okay, so with the next month and our April meeting, is it fair to assume that we'll be able to have some more new reports run by that time, other than the check register that we got this time?
My plan is for the 27th of April, the meeting on the 27th of April. I'm hoping, or my plan is to bring a couple more reports from Skyward and continue to work through the report generation, what you would like to see from the reports as we go forward.
Okay, great. Sounds good. Any other questions from anybody else on the committee?
No, that's great news. I'm excited to see the different reports and be able to look at them in a way that makes sense to the non-school finance people. So.
What I can say is we've had I've had more comments from people who are using the program in the district on how simple it is, or I shouldn't say simple, but how more intuitive it is than Alio. And even
That's
some of the
great.
folks that were quite honestly a little suspect of all the work that we were doing and going through this are now looking at it and very happy with how much smoother it is as far as going through the different processes. So
That's great. That's great news, because I think that if it's more intuitive, that means that our staff can work more smoothly and save everybody time and make us more efficient. So I think that's great. Okay, any other questions on Skyward? All right, let's move on to the policy discussion. So we each picked as members of the committee policies that we wanted to look at. So the first policy that is one that I picked, which is policy 3109, which is district fund balance. And Diana also included in the packet the Neola policy related to this policy as well. So I took a look at those and I compared them, and they look pretty similar, almost identical. But I did have some questions about it that I was hoping, Patrick, that you could answer, because I know that you knew that we were going to be talking about this policy ahead of time.
Mhm.
So when we are holding, so we hold the, a fund balance. One of the purposes of holding a fund balance is this point number 2, which is articulated in the policy, which says that it's supposed to reduce the need for short-term borrowing. But do we really use it in that way? Because I think that we do a lot of short-term borrowing, and I don't think that we tap into the fund balance to eliminate that, do we?
We absolutely tap into our fund balance.
We do.
Right before we short-term borrow,
Yeah.
our fund balance is probably down to about $300,000 or $400,000.
Okay.
So we utilize 100% of that fund balance to reduce our the need for short-term borrowing.
Okay. So then the amount that we short-term borrow is a lot less than what it would be if we didn't use the fund balance.
Yeah, if we did not use fund balance for that, we would essentially double what we short-term borrow.
Okay. Because the way that I look at it as somebody who's not in the day-to-day trenches of doing what you're doing was that, my understanding of it was that the fund balance just kind of sat there and, was like a savings account for us, but that's not how it functions.
That is not how it functions.
Okay.
That's been a conversation that's been going on politically for quite a while. It's not like a savings account.
Sure. Okay.
It does at times though, right, Patrick? That account swings up and down, right?
Oh yeah, it does. And when I report fund balance, I'm actually, for example, when we reported the fund balance, when we did the audit, that is fund balance on a single date of the year.
Right. It's a snapshot.
And so, yeah, and I can tell you within a week of the 31st of June, that fund balance has changed. We pay bills, we may pay, a payroll out of that. And so it's when we report fund balance, we're reporting the fund balance as of the 31st of June every year.
So when one of the objectives of, in our policy surrounding the district fund balance is to maintain a high credit rating by showing fiscal responsibility by having the fund balance, how is that determined functionally? Because if we continue to draw on it and the balance isn't always, is often where it's not supposed to be to maintain that high credit rating, how do we maintain the high credit rating?
When you look at fund balance, they're typically going to look at two things. Is the fund balance high enough that it's helping you control, not eliminate, but at least control your short-term borrowing? That's a benefit. That's a positive. They're also going to look at what your fund balance trend is. If your fund balance is trending up, that's seen as a positive. If it's trending down, that's seen as a negative. And then even if there is a fund balance reduction, what they'll do every year, there's a thing called a rating call, where the rating agency, Moody's in our case, will do an update, and they'll ask you, well, it looks like your fund balance went down. What was the purpose of that? And so there are times when our fund balance can go down and it doesn't impact our credit rating. So
Because it's an explainable kind of situation.
where
Okay.
our credit rating took a hit a few years ago is we built up our fund balance to a very high level, and then we planned on spending that fund balance over the course of a number of years. And it was just one of those where they can see a one-off reduction in fund balance, but when it goes down over a number of years, that typically has a detrimental impact on your credit rating.
And where do we
Our credit rating is still very good.
Uh-huh. But I think we were recently downgraded, weren't we?
Just a few years ago, I believe.
Yeah. Okay. So where are we in the life of the fund balance right now? I mean, are we trending up? Are we trending down? Are we stable?
No, we're trending up.
Okay.
So I would anticipate that if we continue to trend up, and again, we're trending up mainly because of our positive performance in our health insurance.
Yeah.
So if we have a bad year in our health insurance, we could see that go down for a year. Also, if we combine that with the board saying we're going to spend X number of dollars in fund balance from last year to do long-term capital maintenance, and then we have a bad year for health insurance, or we have a bad year, we have a really cold year, and our utility costs are higher than anticipated, or we have a lot of snow and our snow plowing costs are considerably higher. Those are all things that can kind of impact that. But the last few years, we have been trending up. And so again, I could anticipate a rating hike the next time we go for a rating call. Can't guarantee it because, again, these are credit rating agencies, and a lot of it depends on who is doing your credit or your rating call. If you get Bob, he may be very positive toward public education. If you get Mary, she may not have a soft spot for public education. It really, there's so many things that impact that, and that's why I typically don't get too wound up over what our credit rating is as long as it's very strong.
Okay.
So, and ours is strong.
Okay. So the other thing I noticed about this policy versus the Neola policy was that towards the end of the policy, it indicates the school board authorizes and directs, and in our policy says the director of financial services, which I believe would be you, to assign fund balance. In the Neola policy, it says the superintendent. Is there wisdom in doing one way or another?
That's a district choice, and for example, in typically when these Neola policies come, they'll always say the superintendent.
Okay.
And so, for example, the district may say that they're going to stick with the superintendent, but knowing that he will work with the CFO. Districts also will say, well, we're looking for a recommendation on this directly from our CFO. So that's really a district choice.
Okay. So regarding this policy 3109, Mitch and Amy, what are you guys' thoughts on the current status of the policy and the last question that I asked, and what we should do moving forward with this particular policy?
Did you have any red lines that you thought needed to be changed, or additional language you thought would need to be added?
I just had questions about these things, and Patrick's basically answered all of those questions for me. The only thing I don't know what to do about is whether the power is vested in assigning fund balance to the CFO or to the superintendent. And my inclination is to vest it with the CFO because that's what we did with the purchasing policy.
I would agree with that. I would say that the board authorizes and directs the CFO to assign the fund balance in that last paragraph.
But I think that's the only change that I would probably recommend making. Oh, I did have one other question that I forgot to ask, Patrick. One of the things in this policy and the Neola policy that is indicated is that any under budgeted account balances in a given fiscal year will be added to district fund balance. Do we actually do that?
I'm
I don't-
I'm looking at that paragraph.
It's like it's the second paragraph right under the
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4 purposes.
Yeah, so essentially, what that is saying is, if there's a budget or if there's a line item budget that
Yeah.
doesn't get spent
Right.
to its full or to its full budget, those dollars become part of the fund balance, and
Right,
that's
I
exactly
yeah.
what the district does.
Okay, it is. Okay. And then, and are we always having an operating fund balance above 10%?
Actually, our operating fund balance right now is, I believe it's right around 20%.
Okay, good.
So, we set, typically a district will set a low level for fund balance or even a sliding scale for fund balance.
So do you
I
think that it's,
10% is a little low.
okay, so what would you prefer to see that at?
Well, I wouldn't change it. I just think 10% is a little low, and it gives me the flexibility that, if something bad were to happen, we're not going to be out of compliance with our policy.
Sure.
But I would sincerely hope that if our fund balance got to, 15 or 12%, that we would be making some significant changes to how we're funding our education.
Okay.
So
All right.
that's what I'm saying. I don't
Okay,
know if
so-
that changed the policy. I just think that, from my standpoint, I would have significant heart palpitations if we got
Sure.
to 10%.
Sure. Okay, so Mitch and Amy, thoughts on this policy? And aside from, I know, Amy, you said that vesting it in the CFO is your preference also. Mitch, what about you?
Real quick on that 10%, I think I agree with Patrick, and I think we have to write this policy, whether it's Patrick or someone else in there. I think this is supposed to kind of be the flag that's raised once we get below this threshold that we should start doing something. Because it doesn't say we shut down the district. It says the board will take proactive actions to raise the district fund balance back to 10%. So I would like to see this change to 15% if everyone else is in support of that.
So I guess my concern about changing that is the concern that Patrick just raised, which is that 10% gives the district more flexibility in especially times of declining state aid, which is sort of the atmosphere we're working in. So here's the problem. What proactive actions are you going to make if that occurs?
My concern is once we're at 10%, we have a lot less options to do something with. But if we catch this at 50, and again, this isn't to say Patrick would do this, but if we had a different CFO future in 10 years from now,
Sure.
if that
Not
CFO
everybody's as
is
trustworthy as me.
absolutely, that's what I was looking for. But if they spend us down, and let's say this was 5%. If they spend us down to 5%, we don't have the reactive measures then at that point. And this
Sure.
is again, this isn't the now we need to do something. This is okay. Let's look at this. What are we doing? How do we fix this? How do we get out of this? But once you're down to that 10%, there's a lot less you can do, as opposed to being.
So if I'm understanding that, so let me ask a question of you, Patrick, then. If I'm understanding the numbers correctly, the district fund balance of 10%, I think, is somewhere around $5.5 million in fund balance. Is that accurate?
Let's see. 10% fund balance would be about $6 million.
About $6 million. So, okay. So, Mitch, so you're worried about if we have less than $6 million in savings for some catastrophic, and what catastrophic thing are you worried about guarding against above $6 million?
If we're below $6 million, you're talking degradation of bond rating. It's not a catastrophic point at that. It's that, and it's bond rating. You wouldn't be able to go out and borrow.
But it was my understanding that that after you're below 10% was when you had a hit on your bond rating. Is that right, Patrick?
If your fund balance goes below your district fund balance policy, that's when it has a negative impact.
Okay, so that doesn't tell me that it's in our interest to increase it to 15%, because then what we're doing is we're dinging our own credit balance sooner than we would if we leave the policy as it is.
And that's what I would agree with that. If we keep it at 10, it makes us look better with credit rating agencies that we're maintaining a fund balance well above
Our limit.
Our threshold.
Sure. And I get what you're saying, Mitch, about, you want to have more in the savings account for a rainy day. I get that.
I mean, it's the same thing on your checking account. You want that alert to be on your checking account that once you get below $10,000, not $5,000, because at that point, there's little you can do. You only have a couple months of living expenses and you can't pay your groceries, your rent, and everything else. But if you get that alert at 10,000, we can always change this policy in the future too. If say we get to that 15%, we can change it back to 10. We really need.
I would agree with Crislin on this one, Mitch. Raising it to 15% is not going to have any positive impact on us. It could potentially have a negative impact on us for our bond rating. And that's, because now instead of us having a fund balance that's 50% or 75% above the threshold, the low threshold, now we have one that's 10% or 15%. It really, because we're not in a position where this is crucial, I don't think that it needs to be adjusted. The only time I would see this needs to be adjusted is if we wildly start spending fund balance. So I would not recommend making that change. It's not going to do anything to protect us. It's only going to look worse on our next rating call.
I understand what you're trying to say, Mitch. I think that with the current composition of the board, I'm not really worried about us wildly spending fund balance. I'm really not.
Yeah, but my main thing is this isn't for this board. This isn't for this administration.
I agree. I agree.
In general,
but I think
should be living, and I believe that this should be something the board should have. The board should be more cautious on than not.
Right.
I don't think it's the job of this board to protect the district from future boards. I think it's, we should be managing for our existing board.
Well, let me ask Amy. Amy, what are your thoughts about the 10% versus 15% that Mitch is suggesting?
We've been running with this 10% for a long time. I know that we had talked about one point that anytime we want to go below 10, we need to, change our policy. So I think that Neola, recommends 10%. A lot of school districts are running at that, and I think it does help potentially with our short-term borrowing. I don't know if that gives us a little bit more flexibility to, use it while we're short-term borrowing or not. But I would say leave it at 10 at this point.
Okay, so I think, based on that feedback, I think that what the committee, Mitch, what do you think? I don't want to, leave you out just on a majority issue, but I do think that we run the risk of dinging our own credit rating by our own motion if we up it to 15%, and that wouldn't be good for us.
Yeah, I agree that but if we're spending money and we're below that 15%, then we've got a problem. So I guess
right.
we're avoiding a problem that shouldn't be a problem. So it's 2 to 3. I'm fine with it. I'm
okay. All right.
I'm not going to argue.
Then I think that. And Mitch, how do you feel about Mitch vesting the authority in the CFO at the last paragraph where it says the school board authorizes and directs instead of the director of financial services, because we don't really have that position? We would say the chief financial officer to assign fund balance. Is that okay with you?
I wasn't fully understanding of the board authorizing direct superintendent to assign fund balance. So what are we saying, that any excess funds at the end of the year that weren't spent in our budget are designated to be spent on something else then, or I didn't fully understand that.
So
We-
go ahead,
So
Patrick.
here's essentially, so if I would, first of all, what I would recommend is if we're going to change it from superintendent, that we don't just change it to CFO, that we change it to superintendent or his designee, which essentially is the CFO. And then the other thing is, at the end of the year, if we have fund balance, for example, if we want the district the board can direct the superintendent or his designee to designate a portion of fund balance for a specific purpose. That recommendation is going to usually initiate from the superintendent and the CFO, but the board is the one who has to take the action. So they're going to tell us, yes, go ahead and do it.
Okay, and just to be clear, Patrick, in our current policy, the current policy says that the school board authorizes and directs the director of financial services, not the superintendent. The superintendent recommendation is in the Neola policy that we have not enacted.
And I would put it as the superintendent or his designee, his or her designee.
Okay, even though that's different than the purchasing policy that we just passed.
Yeah.
Okay, and Amy, what are your thoughts on
For
that?
fund balance, that's what I would do.
Okay,
Excuse me, I just want to, excuse for the interruption, just want to bring to
Yep.
your attention, it's 6:28.
yep, thank you, Diana. Okay, how about this? How about I just do just a limited red line on this policy, and then I'll submit it to Diana for the next finance committee meeting. I'm sorry, for the,
How about-
go ahead.
Sorry. I was going to say, how about we each, because I have my red line as well, so I'll submit that to Diana as well for the next finance meeting, and maybe we can spend some more time on policies.
That'd be great. And then the last, so I think we'll have to go through the other two in a minute, but I did want to touch on the last item before we sign off, and that is a discussion that Patrick and I had about the elementary PTAs and booster clubs and the tax issues surrounding them. A lot of these organizations don't have their own tax ID number, and that's liability for us. And so, Patrick, I know you and I had talked about that as something that we kind of need to chase down with these individual organizations to make sure that they're operating in an appropriate fashion tax-wise. So what steps do you need from us, or is this something that you can handle in-house and update us on about later? What do you think?
First, I think this is an administrative task, and
Okay.
so this is one of those things that I think Kelly Sanders and I can monitor this. We've already put some new things in place this year with regards to, spending or donating items to the district and getting approvals for that. So I think that we are on a good trajectory for wrapping our arms around the home and school groups. So I would leave this as an administrative task for us, and we can just revisit this once a year. I would say, just find out how we're doing with our home and school groups.
Okay, so can you give us a status, though, on where we are now? So, for example, I mean, for each of these organizations, they have a status. They either have an EIN or they don't.
Right.
And they either have 501c3 status or they don't, right?
We can put that together for a future
That'd be great.
facilities committee or finance
That'd be great.
committee.
And I don't think it's that critical at this point in time, but maybe like a couple months out or something.
Yeah. Nope, I agree.
Okay. Everybody okay with that?
Yep, sounds good.
Yep.
Okay.
All
Okay.
right,
I
are
don't
we ready
have-
to move on to our, okay, sorry.
Yep, no, that's okay. I think that we have to adjourn, though, so I move that we adjourn. Is there a second?
I, Amy Crosby, second the motion.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Ms.
Aye.
Helmer says aye.
Okay, so it's unanimous. We'll adjourn the finance committee meeting, and then do we just stay on this call for the
Yep.
closed set for the next meeting?
Yeah, yep, where people are
Okay.
joining, so yeah, we'll
Okay,
stay on.
great. Great.
Diana, do you need to know who joined, or can we go ahead and call, can I go ahead with the, to call the meeting to order?
Um, it might be helpful. I know we have 3 new callers, so
Susan joined.
Susan, okay. Jeffrey, are you on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Is Janet? Kate?
Yeah.
Kate's on, okay. So we do not have Janet? Well, Amy, it's 6:32. What do you want to do?
I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, and then we will make sure that Janet can get connected as well.
Okay.
Because
So
we're going to be moving into closed session.
correct. So after the roll call, I have closed session meeting. Oh, somebody just called in there. I don't know who that is, but once you do motion to recess to closed session, you'll hang up and then call into the number and meeting access code that was provided, I think, on the agenda as well as the meeting appointment.
Okay, let's go ahead then. So ladies and gentlemen, it is now 6:33 and a quorum of members is present. So the meeting of the Board of Education of the School District of New Berlin is called to order. Please call the roll.
Ms. Crosby,
Here.
Ms. Helmer, Mr. Helmer, I'm sorry. Mr. Helmer.
Here.
Hey, that was funny.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Kurth,
Here.
Ms. Manley,
Here.
Ms. Schulz, and I just got a text that she's having trouble logging in, so maybe we can catch her in closed. Ms. Unger
Here.
and Ms. Wondercheck.
Here.
So fellow board members, as you make motions and second motions tonight, please lead with your name. For example, I, Amy Crosby, move to, or I, Amy Crosby, second the motion so that we can have accurate recording. But in the meantime, I would entertain a motion to adjourn into closed session.
I, Mitchell Helmer, second that motion.
Oh,
Hello, it's Janet. Hey, Janet. So I need a motion to adjourn
Hold
into
on,
closed
Amy.
session.
Amy, I'll read it.
Yeah, okay.
I, Jeffrey Kurth, move to recess into closed session pursuant to section 19.85, 1C, E, and F to consider the Wisconsin statute to consider the approval. Hold on, where is it? Discussion of financing opportunities. I haven't got the whole agenda. And employment performance and compensation matters pertaining to staff.
Susan, second.
So I have a motion by Mr. Kurth, a second by Ms. Manley. Please call the roll.
Mr. Kurth,
Yes.
Ms. Manley,
Yes.
Ms. Crosby,
Yes.
Mr. Helmer,
Yes.
Ms. Schulz,
Yes.
Ms. Unger,
Yes.
Ms. Wondercheck.
Yes.
We are now moving into closed session and will return to open session around 7 p.m. All right. It sounds like we have quite a few on. I don't know if we should do another roll call, just to make sure. Diana, can you call the roll?
Will do. Ms. Crosby,
Here.
Mr. Helmer,
Here.
Mr. Kurth,
Here.
Ms. Manley,
Here.
Ms. Schulz,
Here.
Ms. Unger,
Here.
Ms. Wondercheck.
Here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is now 7:11 and we are returning from closed session into open session. In recognition of the serious and important nature of our efforts here, we will join in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag
to the flag of the United States
States of America and to the
and to the
republic for which it
republic for
stands,
which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now, for those who wish to prepare for the meeting, we will have a moment of silence. This is a public meeting of the Board of Education. Prior to this meeting, notice was given to the public last Friday by posting the agenda at each district school, the district office, and the city library. The agenda was also posted on the district website. A copy of the agenda was forwarded to the Journal Sentinel, the Waukesha Freeman, and the Waukesha Now, all of which have filed requests for all public notices. Next on our agenda is the student representative update.
So we will be providing an update, a video update that will be live streamed on our YouTube channel. And so, Diana, can you confirm that we are still on the channel?
We are, and like I mentioned before, there might be a little bit of a delay from what Dan hears, so it may take a moment for those updates to pop up.
Sure, and what we'll do is we're just going to run, Ms. Crosby, we're just going to run both those back to back on the YouTube channel.
Okay, sounds good.
Hello, my name is Lila Kraft and I'm a 6th grade student at Elmwood, as well as an Elmwood Student Leadership Team representative. And I am here to tell you about all the amazing things going on within the Elmwood community. First up is the food drive. During the month of November, Elmwood Student Leadership Team hosted a food drive where we were able to collect over 600 items. And with the help of our school, we reached our largest donation totals up to date. Next up is the toy drive. We also hosted a toy drive for the Waukesha County Christmas clearing. And in the short time span that we had the drive, we were able to collect around 150 toys. It felt so great to be able to help our surrounding community and give back during the holiday season. And lastly, Jump Into Your Future Day. During the month of February, we were able to participate in a Jump Into Your Future Day. This was a great learning experience and gave many students a glimpse into the opportunities ahead. As you can see, we have wonderful things going on within our school community, and we are continuing to roar towards excellence.
Hello. For an update relating to sports, senior Aaron Hedman was named to the Wisconsin Basketball Coaches Association as a first-place team All-State. Boys basketball earned the following accomplishments this season. They had a 20-5 overall record. They were WIAA sectional finalists, as well as conference champions and regional champions. Junior Sam Ludwig was named All-Star Honorable Mention by the Wisconsin Basketball Coaches Association, and all winter sports are now complete. For an update relating to activities, the Eisenhower Act team are the D2 state champs and finished second overall, and Eisenhower DECA went to Lake Geneva for their state competition, where many competitors qualified for internationals.
Thus ends the elementary and secondary student representative updates.
Very well done. So the next item is privilege of the floor. Diana, do we have any?
We do not.
Which brings us to the president message. So I just wanted to take some time here to thank everyone, both fellow board members, administration, and the community for their patience and flexibility as we navigate tonight's board meeting through the use of the technology. Although we cannot physically be together this evening, I'm thankful that we can still come together to continue our work for the district. And I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the hard work our staff and administration have done over the last week to make today's first virtual learning day a success. While there will be some bumps along the way, as a parent and a board member, I'm proud to be part of a district that is working so hard and adapting so well to provide our students the excellent education opportunity, or excellent education we come to expect no matter what the situation. So next on our agenda is a superintendent update.
Yeah, most certainly I would echo a lot of your sentiments, and a few other things that I just wanted to bring up. I know Amy will likely mention in future meetings and dates the special board meeting that we're requesting for next week, Wednesday. It would be Wednesday, April 1st. No, it is not an April Fool's. We are actually going to have a special board meeting that night. While we did try and lighten the agenda for tonight, just to heat up to other priorities and so on, we do believe that we have some other issues that we'd like to discuss publicly that includes the LED lighting options that were discussed at a previous board meeting. Those LED lighting options would be for food service prep areas and cafeterias. We do believe we will have a positive recommendation for the board to allow us to actually, again, when you have circumstances that we were not anticipating of having, no students in our schools, it allows us opportunities for work that, again, we didn't think we'd have the time to fit in, and now we do. And so we think we've got a good proposal for the board. And again, we'll be seeking direction of that approval at the next meeting. We'll also need some direction from the board as far as moving forward with some of the major projects that currently aren't in budget, but are budgeted in next year's Fund 50 or the food service program budget. And that is our commercial dishwashing systems updates. Again, we have a healthy fund balance there. We believe that all of the costs for that will be accrued as a result of the work for the LED lighting, and then also here with these washing systems, those all would come out of Fund 50 and the materials needed for both. And then we're also going to be seeking some direction from the board as it relates to staff wage increases. We have to get contracts out probably in the next few weeks. And so in order to do that for our teachers, we need some guidance from the board. As of now, we do have 2.5% budgeted for next school year. We would be bringing a recommendation to stay within that, but certainly we welcome to further that conversation with the board before they make that final determination. I'm happy to announce and very excited to share that we did receive another round of mental health grants that will likely exceed $60,000. While we don't have all the details at this time, as was mentioned not only by the Budget Balancing Task Force, but as mentioned by the board, to have us try and find non-taxable revenue. Here's more opportunity that I guess I'd love to give credit to where credit's due by having Dr. Sanders and her team working to pull that together. So congratulations to us for those additional dollars. And then, as mentioned, we are currently seeking a new foundation director, and we're currently working with the Education Foundation Board and internal staff to determine how best to move forward, whether with a full or a part-time candidate, and basically seeking somebody that can do some major fundraising efforts should we move forward with a capital campaign for outdoor athletic areas or other areas that the board would see appropriate. Based on some of the feedback we've already gotten from the board and from the facilities committee, there could be opportunity there. So
Again, those are the updates at this time. And again, I echo everything that Amy mentioned about the great job that our staff are doing.
Great. The next item on our agenda is the district reports. Are there any items that should be pulled out for separate consideration? Mr. Kurth, can you read the donation report?
Yes, this is Jeffrey Kurth reading the donation report for New Berlin West. The donor was Market Probe in support of the robotics program. They donated $250. For New Berlin West, the donor is Dedicated Computing to support the robotics program. They donated $1,500. For Ronald Reagan, from Ronald Reagan Home and School, they donated $332.72 to be applied to the 3rd grade field trip bus cost. New Berlin West, Waterstone Bank, funds for scholarship for Senior Awards Night. They donated $2,000. Poplar Creek, the Poplar Creek PTO in support of the art program, Crawl Banners and Principals Discretionary Fund, $948.90. Elmwood, the Elmwood Home and School purchased behavior incentives for $171. The Elmwood Home and School for Elmwood also purchased a makerspace furniture for $17,369.27. The Waukesha County Center for Growth to all the schools helped with the cost of busing, $600. And Ronald Reagan, the Ronald Reagan Home and School purchased stools for the 2nd grade at $647.76. We want to thank all of our donors. The school district of New Berlin truly appreciates it. We couldn't do all of this without you. Thank you very much.
Next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. Are there any items that should be pulled out for separate consideration? Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
Jeffrey Kurth, I move to approve.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
This is Jeffrey Kurth. I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Susan, a second.
I have a motion by Mr. Kurth and a second by Ms. Manley. Any further discussion? Diana, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Kurth,
Yes.
Ms. Manley,
Yes.
Ms. Crosby,
Yes.
Mr. Helmer,
Yes.
Ms. Schulz,
Yes.
Ms. Unger,
Yes.
Ms. Wondercheck.
Yes.
That moves us on to our regular agenda. The first item on our regular agenda is the discussion of refinancing opportunities.
This is Joe again, and we have been, as you know, we just mentioned, with the ability to kind of get creative in times like we are and are able to move forward with the LED lighting project, you know, pending board approval. We also have been keeping an eye on the markets, and before about 3 to 4 weeks ago, Patrick and I started a conversation as we started seeing things become unsettling and, you know, interest rates dropping. And so we explored, you know, the possibilities of what that could mean for us in the current bonds that we have and the possible refinancing options that are available to us. Well, since then, a lot has happened. And as a result of that, we were prepared to actually bring a proposal to the board that could have essentially saved us about $45,000, both either in savings and or in tax relief. Again, it wouldn't have been a lot in a $70 million budget, but it certainly was something that we wanted to make sure we brought to the board. But again, with everything that's changed within the market itself, and in consultation with PMA, right now we don't actually have a suggestion or a recommendation. The market is way too volatile to do anything with. Further, because of the volatility, we're not even sure we'd have somebody want to buy the bond or even eligible to buy a bond. And so, you know, again, will things maybe settle down here? Yes. I mean, my God, I hope so. When that happens is to be determined, but we certainly are on top of it. We are working with PMA to try and find a way where we could maximize an opportunity here. Again, we're not seeing a huge amount, like a major game changer, but certainly something that we think that you know, if it's worth saving or providing tax relief, we certainly will bring that forth to the board. But again, we've been keeping an eye on it and just don't have anything to recommend at this time.
All right, thank you. We appreciate you keeping tabs on that and bringing forward any opportunities as they do come. The next item is the COVID-19 update.
Yes, so I'll be providing this to the board, and much of this information, just so everyone knows, you know, we've had several correspondences already that we've shared with not only the school board yourselves, but also our staff and our families and our students. And so this has been an ongoing effort for quite some time. Much of this information has already been provided. In fact, most all of it already has. We would continue to ask people to go to our website to, you know, if families have specific questions about their children, we would ask them to direct those questions to their respectful teachers, and then if not able to be resolved there, to follow up directly with their school administration. If we do get requests at my level or that of central office, those are some of the first things that we ask is, have you talked to the teacher? Have you talked to your administrator? And so we'll continue to do that because those are the people most directly involved in trying to find resolution to either student or family issues. Some of the general updates related to logistics includes the fact that we are closed indefinitely for Governor Evers' orders. I know that's somewhat unsettling for folks. We have received correspondences from concerned parents related to that. You know, we don't know what that means either. It's sometimes unsettling for us too. As of right now, we are closed through at least April 5th with nothing yet being determined either by DPI or by the governor. As you may or may not be aware, a stay-at-home order is coming tomorrow from the governor as well. And we are starting to plan for what that will mean for us and some of the staff members who are still working in our buildings. Regarding canceling events and activities, we are currently sticking with our original April 5th date, as mentioned previously, from Governor Evers' first order. But we expect that to change soon. Now, we don't want to unnecessarily postpone or cancel things like prom, graduation, and other things. But if we don't have to, we don't want to do it right now. Last week we used 4 snow days, and since Friday was already a scheduled professional learning day, we've only been able to absorb those 4. As the board knows, comparably to other districts, we have a lot more days built in than most others. So that allowed us to pull together our staff all of last week to again, make as positive an impact on our students' learning effective today. And I think we've done, as Amy mentioned, a really good job of that, you know, less a few hiccups here and there. As far as our distance learning goes, you know, we did start that today. And again, as mentioned, staff got together last week. They collaborated virtually. In fact, they were supposed to actually come together on Friday, but just given some of the feedback that we were receiving from various agencies, we didn't feel it appropriate to pull together all staff again. You know, trying to limit that less than 10, you know, just got to be a little complicated. But our staff were able to pull together and meet virtually and do their prep that way. And again, you know, I think it went over just as well. You know, we did send home devices and materials with students last Friday. Would have been Friday, March 13th, in anticipation of the extended closure. And for those families that you know, either were on vacation or had kids that were sick, we were able to get them whatever it was that they needed throughout last week. Or if students, you know, had some computer or tech issues, they were able to take care of that last week and address some of those items. Or if kids left some of the, you know, some things in their lockers or gym lockers, we did allow for some of that to occur while trying to monitor smaller groups and maintaining the ever so popular social distancing. You know, again, the state and the DPI have announced that the state instructional minute requirements will be reduced, quite possibly even eliminated. and that they will ensure that all seniors will graduate on time. Again, that's all we know at this time. We believe that more of that will come to follow here shortly. As mentioned previously with regards to some of our finances, it is certainly way too early to predict what kind of financial impact this current situation will have on us. I'm sure in your own respective businesses, it's the same way. But we've also started to think about potential savings along with potential new expenses that again, seem to be coming down that, in some cases are unfunded mandates. It's very important to remember that we likely won't be able to put firm dollar amounts on net savings or costs until we, get closer to the end of the fiscal year and as more direction comes from the federal level, state level, and even at the county level. We continue to, while we do have some staff in our buildings, they are minimal, and we still are continuing to clean any used spaces and/or hallways and other areas nightly as we can. I think that's it for now. And again, I would encourage folks, if just always try and go to the lowest level possible for information. If they are curious about general information as relates to how we're handling things, again, we've got some great resources on our website. And again, we really do appreciate everybody's patience and understanding through this trailing time as we all try and figure out, how best to navigate these uncharted waters. So, again, that's really all I had. I did receive a question from Quizlin that I did share with the board regarding special education services. And Janet then also did forward some questions from an HR perspective as she is your personnel committee chair. We hope to have some of those answers for you, Janet, and everyone else here in the next day or two. And we'll be sending those clarifications out to the full board, likely at my next update. I also did want to mention that one of the questions that had been raised earlier about teacher compensation as it relates to those on our performance model, as far as the maximum amount, that's $3,000 for those that are doing district level work, but the majority are getting about a $1,500 increase to about $750 for those at the classroom. So those are my updates. Again, I did not receive any other questions other than the good question from Quizlin and the great questions from Janet that, again, we'll get back to the board here as soon as we are able.
Hey, Joe, this is Chrislyn. As far as the questions that I asked about special education, so you did answer me, but you're saying that there's some more information that will be coming on that topic?
Well, like everything else, we are literally receiving updates on a daily basis and literally minute by minute. And interestingly enough, too, we're trying to decipher because it seems like everybody's trying to help. And so it's like trying to, go through all of our sources to try and, find, the relevant information. And so we have been using direction from the Department of Public Instruction, other local school districts, and then as anything is being sent down from the U.S. Department of Education, we also are following that lead. But again, like everything else, it's literally changing by the minute. And so while I could say, yes, we are expecting some changes. We are. I just don't know when.
Okay, thank you for that. And I do appreciate the fact that this is a ever-changing, moving target kind of an episode for everybody. Again, just to reiterate some of what I put in the email to you, because anybody who's listening to this meeting doesn't know what was in there. My question surrounding special education was, how is our district going to meet the needs of kids with IEPs when so much of delivering the services under IEPs involves person to person, so teacher to child or aide to child or therapist to child contact? So those are my concerns as far as our special ed kids in the district, because I'm really concerned that nothing, and from my own personal perspective, I have tried using some of these video resources with my son who is in special education, and it is an absolute non-starter with him. We've gotten nowhere. So it's incredibly difficult for all families, and I think even a step above that for special ed families. So I know you've got that in mind. I appreciate you keeping that in mind, and I appreciate whatever updates you can send us as soon as you get them.
All right, thank you for the update.
Oh, I'm sorry. There was one other
Yeah.
topic that I wanted to talk about on this virus update. I know, Joe, that you said we don't know. Of course, we don't know how the end of the school year is going to come together. But if things go south in a fashion where we do have to cancel prom and graduation and all the graduations at the elementary school level, I guess I want to just plant the seed for administration for you guys to think about that perhaps there is a way where we can salvage those events later in the year. So, for example, for our graduating seniors and our graduating sixth graders, all of whom, are going to miss out on a very important milestone for their lives if we don't have these ceremonies and these events. And I'm concerned about that. I don't, and of course it's not fair. Everybody knows it's not fair. But if there's any way that we could just delay those events until, for example, Christmas break and open our buildings and have those ceremonies, have those events for all of those people and their families, if that's a possibility, I guess I'd just like to plant the seed that we think about it and try to make that happen for those families. Even if it's 6 months late, I'd rather see it happen for them and give them the opportunity, knowing that not everybody will be able to participate, but to try to salvage something for them, because this is something that they won't get back unless we really make some extraordinary efforts to help them.
Those are things we've already been dialoguing around, and I've been speaking to other area superintendents with, so no need to plant the seed, but we'll certainly take that into consideration as we continue to deliberate what may come as a result of all this.
I appreciate that, Joe. Thank you so much.
Sure, sure.
Okay, the last item on our agenda is action on items discussed in closed session.
Jeffrey Kurth would like to move to approve the employment, performance, and compensation matters pertaining to staff as presented.
Second, this is Janet.
I have a motion by Mr. Kurth and a second by Ms. Schultz. Any discussion? Diana, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Kurth,
Yes.
Ms. Schultz,
Yes.
Ms. Manley,
Yes.
Ms. Unger,
Yes.
Ms. Wondercheck,
Yes.
Ms. Crosby,
Yes.
Mr. Helmer.
Yes.
That brings us to our future meetings and dates. And as Mr. Garza said, we do have a April 1st meeting, 6:30. That will be a teleconference as well. We will alert the community on how to join that. April 27th meeting is currently planned for Ronald Reagan in the Commons, with a Finance Committee meeting preceding that at 5:30. May 11th at Poplar Creek in the gym. And spring break is set still for April 13th through April 17th. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Oh, sorry. Jeff, we keep doing
Second.
that.
Mitch, seconds.
I have a motion by Mr. Kurth, a second by Mr. Helmer to adjourn. Do we need to call the roll?
Yeah, Mr. Kurth,
Yes.
Mr. Helmer,
Yes.
Ms. Crosby,
Yes.
Ms. Manley,
Yes.
Ms. Schultz,
Yes.
Ms. Unger,
Yes.
Ms. Wondercheck.
Yes.
Motion passes. This meeting is adjourned. And thank
Stay
you,
well,
everybody, for your
everyone.
patience.
Bye.